75% of Texans believe that discrimination against our community is wrong.
Well, this guy has been on the front lines of the LGBT movement for many years, and now he's doing so in the great state of Texas. A big howdy to one of my favorite yeehaw gays out there, Equality Texas CEO, Ricardo Martinez. How are you in the flesh?
I'm doing great. I can't believe you used two very Texas-specific terms.
Well, I have to hand it to your team taught me the yeehaw gays term, so all
Oh, good,
credit back to you in Texas.
good. I'll let them know. They'll be so excited.
Please. Well, listen, you're leading in one of the most critical states right now when it comes to LGBTQ rights. Give me a little bit of the state of the state right now and some insight into how your team takes on all that they are doing there in Texas.
What we're experiencing in Texas is very similar to what other states may be experiencing, but maybe more so in volume in terms of just the urgency of the work that is happening here in Texas, right? So we're talking about this coordinated and layered attack that includes attacks at the legislature. In Texas, we set a record again for the second legislative year in a row for the most anti-LGBTQ bills ever filed in any state legislature in the history of the U.S., and that was 141. We're seeing the weaponization of state agencies, as we saw last year when the governor and the attorney general essentially made it possible for loving families of trans kids to be investigated as child abusers. We see the proliferation of disinformation. We see members of our community being targeted in election pamphlets, to mobilize a base. We see radicalized parent groups showing up to school boards across the state, across the country, to champion anti-LGBTQ policies. We see the infiltration of our safe spaces with protesters, white supremacists, Nazis showing up to our brunches, to our prides, and most recently here in Texas, to our safe spaces in church for faith folks who happen to attend, right? And then we're seeing this vigilantism where people are taking it upon themselves to really target members of our community. And the way that we are fighting all of this is really being thoughtful in terms of the partnerships that we create. We have a coalition in Texas that is BIPOC-led, that includes 5 statewide organizations that are doing incredible stuff that permits us to push back, right, and to mobilize communities across Texas. And that shows up in the way that we were able to not necessarily hold the line 100% this year because 7 bills passed, but if you think about the 134 bills that didn't, that percentage is pretty high. And we're going to continue to fight those bills that ended up passing because, as we have said many times, they are unconstitutional.
When you hear things like acceptance is at an all-time high and you have such a surge in volume of anti-LGBT action and rhetoric in your communities, like how do you balance those two ideas?
75% of Texans believe that discrimination against our community is wrong, right? But there is a very loud, very vocal minority that happens to have people who are paying attention to their message in positions of power, right? And they have great power in this state. And for us, for the LGBTQ community, we don't necessarily have a tremendous amount of institutional power, right? We don't have the governorship. We don't have a lieutenant governor who is supportive. We do not have many folks who are in positions of power who can help, but we always have had the people, and we depend on the people to show up time and time again. We try as much as we can to not necessarily put it on the shoulders of any specific group because we know what a heavy burden this is, especially with 141 bills.
Kind of looking at yourself, like this version of Ricardo you see today, well, what do you see in him?
An imperfect person doing the best that he can every single day to champion equality, right? Like we are flawed. Every single person on this earth is flawed to a certain degree, right? But we have to find this lane. We have to find this purpose that fills us with a tremendous amount of purpose and pride and self-reward in terms of just knowing the impact that you may be having on the lives of so many people. what I see is beyond any possibility that I think was possible for me when I was younger, right? I didn't dream this big when I was little. I was freed by my parents and given the opportunities to do this. And I then met a lot of people who helped put me in this direction, right? I wouldn't have this job if Andy Mara from the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund hadn't said my name to a recruiter, right? So I have a tremendous amount of people that have held me in light and pushed me to where I am today. And if I see anything in me, is just a tremendous amount of gratitude for every single person that I've ever come in contact with and learned something from that made me better or made me introspective about the things that I needed to really explore about myself, that make me better.
And when we talk about living in your truth, authenticity, do you feel like there's a lack of exactly those two things in the people who are attacking the LGBT community?
I know that they're there. I know what they're doing, but I don't often think about their intent because I'm too focused on moving our work forward. Understanding their strategy, certainly, but I don't really spend a lot of time in thinking about whether or not they have this reflection or authenticity. I think people approach the work or their anti-LGBTQ extremism from the lens of which they were raised, right, and the messages that they have received. I think for me, it really is more about focusing on the work, ensuring that we are representing the community as much as we can, and doing the most good for the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time.
Of the queer community that you are serving in Texas, what are you hearing most about why they're proud Texans, despite all that's going on? What makes them proud to be Texans?
I'm proud to be in Texas, and I'm part of I can consider myself a Texan now. My grandmother used to speak so lovingly about Texas, right? She used to be a migrant worker who used to pick cotton in Brownsville, and my uncles were born in the States, two of them, and they lived here, right? And my grandma had such a happy life here, and often and romanticized this state in such a way that I look forward to being here. And she's no longer alive, but I always wonder, like, what would she think if we were able to have this conversation again? At the time, I didn't have anything to contribute, right? Besides like her interpretation, her experience of Texas. What would she think to know that this state was attacking people like me in this way, people that she loves so deeply and profoundly? And I don't know what she would say, but I think she would be somewhat disappointed. And I would hate for Texas to be tainted in that way for her. People stay here because they have roots, right? People love being Texan, queer Texans, because they have roots here. They belong here, and they shouldn't have to escape their state to feel safe and affirmed.
Well, in the short time that I've been able to get to know you, I've always admired your centeredness and that energy that you have to kind of stay focused and to be relentless despite all the noise all around you. So props to you and thank you for that. What would you say is your truth? Like, who and what is Ricardo today, this version of yourself?
I always say that I'm an extension of my mother and her generosity, compassion, empathy, because that is all that she is to me, right? And that's the person who raised me most of all, and whose values I represent in the world. And I think part of the reason why I try to remain as calm and kind most of the time, and experience things navigate the world through with a great sense of compassion and empathy, is because my mom taught me that, and that's what my mom would do. So I'm an extension of her. I'm an extension of her mom and my family. It's just such an existential question to ask, right? But I am, regardless of what people believe. I just am, right? And you cannot take my joy, my happiness, my truth away from me just because you disagree. And I am happy to be doing this work on behalf of so many people, and I take it incredibly seriously.
I love that. Your truth is that you are. And I think that's not a bad place to leave it. One of my favorite yeehaw gays right here. Once again, thank you, Ricardo. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
To see more episodes of Truth Be Told, check us out at Plus Life Media and pluslifemedia.com. Until next time, let your truth be told.